Shabbat Shalom. I hope you're getting ready for a restful and relaxing Shabbat. This past week, I had a fascinating conversation. I thought it was fascinating with two colleagues, Rabbi Reuben Pupko and Rabbi Mark Fishman. We had a public conversation about synagogue life post-pandemic. After the pandemic is over, what does synagogue life look like? And one of the points on which we concurred has to do with the sense of precedent, that we've been here before. One of the areas of comfort that we've experienced, and across the Jewish world and even non-Jewish world, across the world of houses of worship, as we made adjustments to how we did things, we looked at the historical model. We looked to the 1830s, to the epidemics that took place in Europe then. And we looked at Rabbi Akiva Eger, one of the great leaders of 19th century European Jewry, and how he established protocols in the time of an epidemic that, for example, they had to maintain every other seat in the synagogue open as a way of ensuring distance between people. And so they held a lottery before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, who would attend on Rosh Hashanah and who would attend on Yom Kippur, but not both. You couldn't attend both because we had to keep every other seat open to provide for that distance. And many other decrees that he made for the community to keep everyone healthy and safe. And part of the comfort in looking at these historical models is looking at what happened afterwards, because there's a great deal of elasticity in our community and our rituals, and essentially they went back to normal. We don't live with any of these decrees today in normal pre-pandemic life. None of the decrees that they made in the 1830s lasted until the 21st century as we know it. And so part of the comfort of looking at how they confronted with these issues in history is also seeing how they went back to normal life. And in that sense, one of the areas in which the rabbis agreed is that post-pandemic synagogue life will look a whole lot like pre-pandemic synagogue life. That's not to say there haven't been areas in which we've learned a lot, ways of communicating, ways of bringing religion and celebrating our faith in different ways outside of the synagogue, as we've learned to by necessity. But that is to say that our rituals will be familiar, and those experiences that we loved and brought us so much meaning and comfort before will continue in the future. In our Torah portion this week, we read of the commandment of, in Hebrew, the chatzotzrot, which means the trumpets. These were the instruments that they used in order to call people to battle, call people to move, to march. For so many reasons, they would bring out these silver trumpets. And as the commandment is described, Moses is commanded, Aseh lecha, make for you, shtei chatzotzrot, two of these trumpets. And the word lecha, for you, is an essential word, because as opposed to any of the other ritual objects that existed in the wilderness, the other objects were meant to be used from generation to generation, to be passed down. The very same objects were meant to be multi-generational concepts. The exception is these trumpets. Aseh lecha, Moses, make for you, and not lidorot, and not for all of the generations, for you, and not to be handed, not for your children, not for your grandchildren. And one of the areas of meaning here is that every generation has to find its own voice. The notes that we play might be the same, the values might be the same, the commandments are the same, they come from the same place, but the way of expressing ourselves, that's different. Each and every generation finds its own way. And in terms of post-pandemic life and thinking of what that means for us and what that means to us, one of the areas in which we have suffered, communities have suffered, has been, even as we've reopened, even as we've slightly reopened here, greater numbers there, one of the areas that's been observed across the Jewish world, unfortunately, has been that there's been no place for children in synagogue. We haven't had youth groups, and in fact, we've had to make rules because of distancing and because of the way children move about. We've had to have rules, no children in shul. And so when it comes to post-pandemic life, this must be a renewed focus for our community and for all communities, that those metaphorical trumpets, the sounds of the next generation, have to be heard. We have to make room and space for them, because that's what a post-pandemic life must look like for us. In order for the continuity of the generations, in order for our tradition to continue, in order for our tradition to thrive, that sense of youth has to be restored to our sacred spaces. And that's part of looking back at the historical model. That's part of the comfort as well, which is that the tradition did continue, that after they had to suspend things here and there for this reason or that reason, it always went back to refocusing on what does it mean to be a people that values continuity, that values giving the tradition over from generation to generation. I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Stay healthy and well, and look forward to seeing you again in person very soon. Shabbat Shalom.
We try to infuse as much ruach, as much spirit as possible, especially on Shabbat day. That is why around the world it is traditional in many homes to sing Zmirot, to sing songs around the Shabbat table. And perhaps one of the most famous of these songs, the Zemer, is called Yaribon, God, Master of the Universe. It was written by Rabbi Yisrael ben Moshe, who was born in Damascus in the year 1555. Later on in his teenage years, he moved to Tzfat, the epicenter of mysticism. And mysticism played a great role in his life and influenced many of the poems and songs which he wrote. That is also why this song, Yaribon, is written in Aramaic and not in Hebrew, as that was the language that was used by the mystics. Yaribon olam ve'olamaya ve'olamaya Antu malaka melech malchaya melech malchaya Ovad gevurtech vetimaya shefar kadamach leachavaya שבחין אסדר צפרה ורמשה, צפרה ורמשה. לך לה קדישה דיברה כל נפשה, דיברה כל נפשה. עירין קדישין ובניינה שכבת ברע ואופי שמיה. Yaribon olam ve'olamaya ve'olamaya Antu malaka melech malchaya melech malchaya Ravrevin ovdecha ve'takifin ve'takifin Machich remaya ve'zakif kefifin ve'zakif kefifin לא יחיה גבר שנים אלפין לה יהול גבורתך בחוש בניה יריבון עולם ועולמיה ועולמיה אנטו מלכה מלך מחיה מלך מלכיה אליה דילי יקר ורבותה, יקר ורבותה. פרוקיה תנח מפורמייבתה, מפומרייבתה. ואפק יתמך מגוגלותמך, תבחרת מכל אומיה. יריבון עולם ועולמיה ועולמיה אנטו מלכה מלך מלכיה מלך מלכיה למקדשך טוב, למקדשך טוב, למקדשך טוב, ולקודש קודשין, למקדשך טוב, למקדשך טוב, למקדשך טוב ולקודש קודשין התרדי ויחדון בי ויחדון רוחין ונפשין התרדי ויחדון רו ויחדון רוחין ונפשין רוחין ונפשין רוחין ונפשין ויזמרון לך שירין ורחשין בירושלים קרתת שופריה ויזמרון לך שירין ורחשין בירושלים קרתא דשופריה, יא ריבון עולם ועולמיה ועולמיה. אנטו מלכה מלך מלכיה, מלך מלכיה.